At this point in the evening, the projected winner of the Iowa caucuses has just started giving his victory speech. We will keep an eye on that as it happens. We will let you know if there's any news made in that speech, if there's anything noteworthy, something substantive and important. The reason I'm saying this is, of course, there is a reason that we and other news organizations have generally stopped giving an unfiltered live platform to remarks by former President Trump. It is not out of spite. It is not a decision that we relish. It is a decision that we regularly revisit. And honestly, earnestly, it is not an easy decision, but there is a cost to us as a news organization of knowingly broadcasting untrue things.
Rachel Maddow has once again made herself the butt of ridicule in her pathetic and clownish coverage of the Iowa caucuses, accusing President Trump of doing precisely what she's been guilty of doing her entire miserable career. And social media is calling her out big time. Wait until you see this. Hey, gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, here to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. The fallout from President Trump's epic and historic win in Iowa continues. Many of you, I'm sure, saw Vivek's passionate endorsement of Trump in New Hampshire, where he dropped truth bomb after truth bomb before the packed house.
We believe those ideals still exist. This man is going to be your next president to revive them. E pluribus unum, from many, one. And you know how we're doing it? We're doing it by speaking the truth at every step of the way. There are two genders in this country. Period. That is the truth. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear energy. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. Capitalism lifts us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government in the United States, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution is the strongest and greatest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth.
But speaking of truth, Rachel Maddow over at MSNBC seems to be struggling with the definition of that term. As you heard at the beginning, Rachel Maddow, of all people, has apparently appointed herself as the Ministry of Truth Secretary, overseeing a disinformation governance board charged with censoring speech that she deems dangerous for you to hear, claiming, quote, "There's a cost to us as a news organization of knowingly broadcasting untrue things." She literally said that. According to Rachel Maddow and the propagandists over at MSNBC, they censored President Trump's victory speech because there's a cost to us as a news organization of knowingly broadcasting untrue things. You mean things like this?
Now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person. A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else. It cannot use a vaccinated person as a host to go get more people. That means the vaccines will get us to the end of it.
Now, of course, we all now know that what she just said there was blatantly untrue. What she just said there was demonstrably false. That was the epitome of fake news. And I'm curious, has she ever once apologized to her audience at MSNBC for telling everyone blatant misinformation? I've not seen that apology. I've not seen that admission. I've not seen Rachel Maddow as quick to censor herself as she is in censoring others. Oh, but perhaps because that was just a fluke. Perhaps that was just Rachel Maddow having an off day. Perhaps.
Russia, Vladimir Putin, Russia, hates Russia, Putin, Russia, Moscow, Russia, pro-Russian, the Russians, Moscow, Russia, Putin, Russia against us, Russians, Russia against the U.S., the Russian government scheme, the Russians, Vladimir Putin, Putin and Russia, Moscow, Russia, the Russians, Putin, Russia, the Soviet Empire, the second of the 20th century's great evils, communism, Russia, assault by Russia,
Putin despises the West in general and the United States in particular, the Soviet Empire. Russia. They're the adversary. They want to bring us down, the Soviet Union.
Russia.
Undermine the West, Soviet communists on the left.
Russia. That does it for us tonight. We will see you again tomorrow.
Hey, gang, you may have heard about President Trump issuing a dire warning about America and the very thing we depend on to live, the U.S. dollar. Now, if Trump's warning comes true, this could be, in his words, bigger than losing any war. But if Trump's prediction is right, and as you know, he's been right about a lot of things, and we lose our status as the world's reserve currency, I mean, just imagine how this could impact your retirement savings and your quality of life. So that's why you should take Trump's warning very seriously by clicking on the link below or going to turleywarning.com right now, because there you'll see what thousands of Americans are doing to help protect their savings before it's too late. Plus, when you click on the link, you'll even see how to get up to $10,000 in free silver to protect your savings. But don't wait. We may not have long if Trump's prophecy comes true. So hurry up and click on that link below or go to turleywarning.com right now.
Bent on overthrowing the U.S. government. And members of Congress who were sympathetic...
Rachel, this speech is boring and paranoid. Can you explain why you promoted the Steele... Why did you promote the Steele dossier, which has been proven to be a lie? Why did you promote the lie of Russian bounties? Can you ever be held accountable for the lies you told Americans for years and years and years? You lied to Americans for years.
Let's go.
Silence is violence, Rachel.
You're out. You're out. It's bad.
Let's go.
Obviously, Rachel Maddow was not the one to deliver that rather tortured public service announcement regarding MSNBC's unblemished commitment to the truth. The truth is that Rachel Maddow's propensity towards peddling and blatant misinformation has been called out by her peers in the legacy media. When the Robert Mueller report was finally released a couple of years back, the Washington Post's Eric Wemple wrote a scathing rebuke of Maddow's so-called coverage of the dossier. He wrote, quote, "When small bits of news arose in favor of the dossier, the franchise MSNBC host pumped air into them. At least some of her many fans surely came away from her broadcast thinking the dossier was a serious piece of investigative research, not the flim-flam, quick-twitch game of telephone outlined in the Horowitz report. She seemed to be rooting for the document, and when large bits of news arose against the dossier, Maddow found other topics more compelling. She was there for the bunkings, absent for the debunkings, a pattern of misleading and dishonest asymmetry." Now, that assessment is dead on. Rachel Maddow represents the kind of utter and complete nonsense that you get when you disguise left-wing activists as legitimate journalists and reporters. You get an unmistakable pattern of misleading and dishonest asymmetry. Again, note that this fellow over at the Washington Post, Wemple, what he said there, it's not simply asymmetry. It's not simply a matter of consistently reporting one political side, the left-wing side, as good and favorable and holy and righteous, while presenting the other political side, the political right, as evil and wicked and bad and the like. That would certainly be bad enough. And of course, we see that asymmetry all the time presented as, quote, news by the corporatist globalist media. But it's not just that. The Washington Post, of all places, accused Maddow of a pattern of deceitful asymmetry, what they call here misleading and dishonest asymmetry. But unfortunately, none of this should surprise us. Over the last several years, the legacy media, most particularly MSNBC, has gone woke. And wokeness sees truth as radically political. In other words, truth is that which benefits the partisan aspirations of a single political side. Whatever helps in attaining those political aspirations is by definition true, and whatever threatens to thwart those aspirations is by definition false or untrue. Donald Trump represents the single greatest existential threat to the future of wokeness and the institutional authorities dedicated to its propagation. Therefore, everything Trump says is for them by definition untrue. Maddow and MSNBC operate with what's technically known as performative truth. Something is true simply because those in authority declare it to be true. What we routinely hear on MSNBC, as you can see, is not truth presented in its normative sense, where a multitude of independent sources together corroborate the claims that are being made. No. The left-wing activists disguised as journalists at MSNBC see themselves as the arbiters of truth. They are the creators of truth, and that truth will always, always, always benefit and promote their far-left partisan agenda. Always. There's only one thing to do here, and that's to defeat them, and defeat them decisively. That is what they fear the most, and that is what Trump's victory in Iowa is ultimately about. And that is the truth. As many of you know, we have unfortunately been completely and totally demonetized, which is putting our daily communication with one another at risk like never before. Now, we are actively working on getting this resolved, but as things stand, this channel has, without any warning, been totally and completely demonetized. And as Elon Musk said so powerfully last week, the whole point of these demonetization efforts is to deliberately try to make us patriots feel like we're all alone. They want to sever our relationship with each other and force on us a kind of digital solitary confinement so as to demoralize us and discourage us like never before. But to their horror, it's not working. Over this past week, you have carried this channel like never before. We've had more people than ever make the courageous decision to bypass big tech and join our Insiders Club. We have direct access to one another that can never be interrupted by big tech overlords. Over the last 7 days, we've seen literally thousands of you come to our rescue. And you've done it in two ways. You've signed up for our free newsletter and you've officially joined our Insiders Club. Those two acts alone are enough for us to collectively stand together and never, ever have our relationship severed. So I'm inviting the rest of you to do the same today, just by clicking on that link below and signing up for our newsletter and joining our Insiders Club. You are guaranteeing that there is nothing that big tech can do to get between us and make us feel like we're in a digital solitary confinement. It's as simple as clicking on the link below right now and opting into our free email newsletter. And once you do that, you can financially support us by joining our Insiders Club. Gang, from the bottom of my heart, I cannot thank you enough for your support during a time like this. You are my heroes, and it will be my mission to express my appreciation for every single one of you each and every week.